Good evening, everyone. This is your boy Saxman, and this is another episode of the Saxman Russaw Show, Breaking News. I'm going to bring you a video about Joe Biden and his speech he gave. People think that he did such an awesome job on his speech. It's just regurgitated words used by other presidents and elected officials that used it before in the past. So without further ado, let's get the video started.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. After 3 tries, more than 3 decades of attempting it, Joe Biden last night finally got his party's nomination. A year ago, virtually no one would have predicted this moment. For most of the long primary season, Biden floundered near the bottom of a crowded field. He got so few votes in New Hampshire, he didn't even bother with a concession speech. He fled the state on a late-night charter flight and tried to pretend it never happened. In the end, Biden won anyway. The last kid picked for kickball somehow wound up captain of the team. So no matter what you think of him, that is an undeniable achievement. And yet still, even now, very few people take Joe Biden seriously. Why is that? Well, if you've seen Biden talk, you know why. He is fading. That's not a partisan point. It's not intended to be cruel. It's true. 77-year-olds generally are not meant to lead large countries. 77 is not the prime of life. It is old age. Vigor declines over the course of a lifetime, particularly in men. Joe Biden has grown weak. That's why we don't take him seriously. But as it turns out, there's another way to look at Joe Biden's decline. It's a perspective that hasn't occurred to most Republicans, but clearly it's at the center of the Democrats' election strategy. Yes, Joe Biden is slowing down. For 50 years, he couldn't stop talking. Now he has trouble starting sentences. He forgets words. He misnames states. Occasionally, he mistakes his sister for his wife. Every time he gets confused, Biden grins in that charming way old people do when they know they're losing it. So yes, Joe Biden has gotten a little daffy, but for that very reason, he's not going to hurt you. There is nothing threatening about him. He's not aggressive or overly ambitious. In a time of chaos and shouting, it might be comforting to be led by a man who talks about record players and wears slippers with the socks attached. That's the actual message, the subtext of the Biden campaign. No one in the Democratic Party will say it out loud. No one ever will. But Biden's handlers understand that his punchiness could be his biggest asset. Because Biden is so obviously ineffective, he's harmless. Because he is passive, you assume he is well-meaning. You wouldn't put Joe Biden in charge of your dinner reservations, but on the other hand, he's probably not going to send you to an internment camp. In that way, Biden is the mirror image of, say, Elizabeth Warren. Warren's eyes gleam with the menacing promise of Germanic efficiency. Biden's eyes are like windows onto an empty sky. There's nothing there, just a placid void. Democrats see an advantage in this. A party that no longer represents the mainstream needs a leader who won't scare voters. Joe Biden's job is to soothe your fears about what the left will do if they ever take power. Stacey Abrams or Beto O'Rourke could never do that. Their plans for you are too obvious. Joe Biden has no plans. The most radical mass political movement in American history has found a front man who seems like he should be feeding pigeons. Democrats are happy about that. If you didn't see Biden speak last night, you may not fully appreciate this dynamic. Some Republicans in Washington will tell you that Biden's acceptance speech was scary. It's their job to say things like that. But in this case, that's not true. Watch this clip and ask yourself what you disagree with.
But while I'll be a Democratic candidate, I will be an American president. I'll work hard for those who didn't support me, as hard for them as I did for those who did vote for me. That's the job of a president, to represent all of us, not just our base or our party. This is not a partisan moment. This must be an American moment. It's a moment that calls for hope and light and love. Hope for our future. Light to see our way forward, and love for one another. America isn't just a collection of clashing interests of red states or blue states. We're so much bigger than that.
An American moment, an American president, an American leader who represents everyone, regardless of party. A country that's more than just a collection of clashing interests, a future with hope and love for our fellow Americans. That's what Joe Biden promised last night. Is there anyone who doesn't want that? Well, the leaders of Joe Biden's party, for one thing. What you just heard does not represent the DNC's vision for America. It's not even close. Read their platform. Watch their speeches. We just spent all week doing it. Democratic leaders are not calling for unity. They're demanding division. They staged an entire convention that amounted to an extended tribute to the zero-sum viciousness of identity politics. This group gets this, that group deserves that. Give it to us now. A nation of 350 million people splintered into countless warring tribes, united by nothing apart from a common loathing of their own country. It was an orgy of anti-American grievance mongering. And from start to finish, it was relentlessly, savagely partisan, even by the standards of a partisan political convention. Watch the Reverend Freddie Haynes explains that Jesus hates Republicans too.
You had the nerve to build a wall while at the same time you have in the harbor there in New York a Statue of Liberty saying, give me your tired, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Jesus will say, America, if you don't get your act together, you may well go to hell.
America is headed to hell, says the Reverend Freddie Haynes, damned for eternity. Flames, smoke, pitchforks, gnashing of teeth, the whole thing. That's not speculation. It is a straight red-letter prediction from Jesus himself. And also, by the way, from the Reverend Jeremiah Wright of Chicago. Jeremiah Wright was the Reverend Freddie Haynes' spiritual mentor. He and Barack Obama have that in common. Jeremiah Wright didn't actually speak at this week's DNC, but he was certainly there in spirit. Kamala Harris channeled Jeremiah Wright in her primetime speech. Watch Harris diagnose America with a fatal case of racism.
There is no vaccine for racism. We've got to do the work. For George Floyd, for Breonna Taylor, for the lives of too many others to name. We've got to do the work to fulfill that promise of equal justice under law. Because here's the thing, none of us are free until all of us are free.
There's no vaccine, explains Dr. Harris. Looks like the patient won't make it. Sorry. America is dying from the virus of racism, and there's nothing we can do. We've reached the limits of modern medicine. We're going to have to let this country go and start over. Kamala Harris was hardly the only one to say that. Speaker after speaker this week hit the same theme. America is beyond redemption. Tear it down and build a new country with us in charge. There's just no vaccine for America's sin. It's terminal. It's unlikely that any major political party has ever had speakers say anything like this from the podium. Attacking the country you're trying to lead is a radical move, and typically it's not a good way to win a majority. But this message wasn't aimed at the majority. In fact, they would rather you didn't hear it. That's why they trotted out Joe Biden. The job of a president is to represent all of us, Biden reassured the country last night, not just our base. Everyone's for that. And yet virtually every word at the convention, other than Biden's speech, was aimed directly at the left's base, the coalition of the miserable, that is the engine of the Democratic Party. Needless to say, the base loved it. Here's the single dumbest talking head on the single dumbest cable news channel clapping her hands in infantile glee because Democrats managed to exclude an entire racial group from this week's proceedings. She's grateful for that. She just couldn't bear to look at them anymore.
It was all about representation. My little melanated, cynical heart, my immigrant melanated woman heart felt so full last night. Actually, today with David and John is the first time I see a white man like in 8 hours, this, other than Joe Biden last night. And that's okay. They've had 240 years of representation. They're going to be okay.
What's wrong?
I just read a report on how the FBI was abusing spying warrants.
What kind of person would say something like that, or even think it? If you ever catch yourself feeling thrilled that you don't have to see certain racial groups, if you find people who look different from you that horrifying, that repulsive, then you can be certain that you are indeed a racist, a nasty one too. And that's exactly the sort of person the Democratic National Convention was aimed at. Meanwhile, outside the convention, the base stayed busy. Thousands of Biden voters worked to help the Democratic ticket in the ways they know best, by hurting people and destroying things. None of that was hidden. Anyone who lives in an American city or can navigate a computer knew exactly what was going on. But if you got your news exclusively from the Democratic message machine, you would have no idea. You'd have no clue that your country was being completely reshaped by violence in the streets. There was no mention of that at all from Democratic leaders at the convention this week. Antifa wasn't allowed to send delegates. Various speakers made BLM sound like a branch of the United Way. The media did not contradict this message. They simply refused to cover the violence outside. It was like it all never happened. It's possible that Joe Biden never found out about it. Biden doesn't get outside much. He knows only what they tell him. Judging from his speech last night, Biden has come to believe that he is Mahatma Gandhi, leading a movement to restore love to the human heart.
We can choose a path of becoming angrier, less hopeful, more divided, a path of shadow and suspicion, or we can choose a different path and together take this chance to heal, to reform, to unite. A path of hope and light.
A path of hope and light. It sounds like a Beatles lyric from their acid phase. But actually, it's a beautiful sentiment, if we're being honest. Who doesn't want hope and light? We all do. All decent people want that. And that's why it's a winning message in a national election. Unfortunately, it's also a deeply dishonest message. Unity is not what the Democrats are promising. Unity is not what they plan to deliver. The media understand that very well. They're committed Democrats themselves. Hope and light? Please. These people cheered when they thought Roger Stone was going to die in prison for some made-up crime. They cried when he was spared. These are hardened partisans, and not just the ones whose brothers are sitting governors. They know perfectly well that what Joe Biden said on stage last night was absurd. But they also know that many Americans will believe it. So they love the speech.
It may have been the best speech that Joe Biden ever delivered.
I think this may be the best speech Joe Biden has ever delivered. This was one of the strongest speeches of Joe Biden's career.
It was
50 years.
Probably the best speech I ever heard.
50 years, and you finally got a best speech.
Whoever wrote that speech needs to get a cookie and a hug and a flag.
Glass of milk.
Puppy. That thing was crafted so well.
He came ready, Chris.
He absolutely did.
He spoke passionately.
All you Democrats believe that bullshit.
Of two visions of what this country is about. One is about anger. Joe Biden gave you something very different tonight. He said, and I quote, "I will draw on the best of us."
I am just like, if I could jump out of the chair, I mean, this is...
But he had 50 years to have you go jumping out of the fucking chair. 50 years.
Best night for Joe Biden ever.
Right. 50 years.
Jennifer Granholm might be right about that. Unfortunately, in the short term, lies often work.
Mm-hmm.
CNN went farther than that, by the way. They described Biden's speech as, quote, a moment when the destiny of a man and his nation converged. What does that mean for you exactly? What does it say about them? That's next.
Music Studio.
All right. That's the end of this show. I'm going to upload another one. We're going to continue on to bring attention and awareness to what's going on in both Republican and Democratic Senate and what's going on out in the world right now. A lot of fuckery is going on, a lot of dumb stuff going on. People falling for it. Listen, enjoy my videos. What's this here? Enjoy my videos. What the hell coming on here? But anyway, enjoy my videos. Watch and enjoy my videos. Subscribe to my show, the Saxman Russaw Show. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell so you can get notifications for every time I upload a video. Make sure you like my video. If you don't like it, hit a thumbs down. If you like it, hit a thumbs up. Hit something. Okay, and stay tuned. I'll be putting up another show in a couple more hours, maybe I throw it up. Enjoy. I hope you enjoyed it. This is your boy Saxman, and this is another episode of Saxman Russaw Show. Breaking news. Keep tuning in. Support your boy. See you later.